There's no way to separate, my faith and who I am and from what I do.
We're on mission. We love chiropractic. We understand the dangers of subluxations, but our patients don't really know it because we're not letting it come out. So I'm not surprised that with the success you're having, you're willing to and brave enough to and courageous enough to allow what you are about, who you are, what you're passionate about, to come out of you and be part of the practice. Those are always the best practices that are out there. Hey, and welcome to the Christ-Centered Podcast. We've got Dr. Erin with us today. Welcome, Dr. Erin.
Thank you.
So you really embody for me just like this perfect image of the chiropractor. You've got this incredible soul. You have this really amazing compassion for patients and for people. You love Jesus. And you don't stop. You're
begin with the end in mind.
As I say, you're a God chaser. You know, there's this old Tommy Tenney book, which is this great book called The God Chasers. And you're a God chaser. You're serving Him. You're saving lives. You're committed to chiropractic. Like, you just keep striving to know Him more and get better. So I just love working with people like you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm excited to chat with you today a little bit about it, and just so honored to be working with you over these last 10 months or so already.
It's amazing. Yeah, that it's only it seems longer and shorter both at the same time.
I know.
So when I was thinking about coming on with you today, I thought about Peter from the Bible, because he's certainly known as this guy that was continuously signing verbal checks he couldn't cash, kind of pre the cross. And of course, even at the end, famously known for selling out Jesus right before his crucifixion. Yet post-resurrection, he plants the church. He gives what essentially is the first sermon, and 3,000 people come to Christ and are baptized in the Holy Spirit. And so, he comes around and becomes, certainly, the rock, as Jesus said, the foundation of the church. And in fact, ultimately, he goes to jail, so where he said he wasn't with Jesus to a 12-year-old slave girl, when Jesus was taken after the cross, after the crucifixion and the resurrection, he's willing to go to jail. And when they say, hey, we'll let you out of jail if you stop talking about Jesus, he says, I'm not going to stop. That's a very different Peter, to the point where he keeps going, and it's not in the Bible, but it's known that he was crucified upside down. So he keeps his commitment up until even his awful death, just because at this point he knows Jesus is real. And so you remind me a lot of Peter in after the crucifixion and after the resurrection, because of your commitment. I know you don't really have to work. You don't have to keep seeing more people. Your husband has a great job. You've already done very well in chiropractic, yet you stay committed to serving God, saving lives. I'd love to find out what inspires you to keep doing that.
It's really, I just want my life to have an impact, really, is what it boils down to. Probably 10 years ago or so, just having experienced something in my personal life, nothing terribly tragic, but just an experience where God showed me that my life can be a blessing to other people. And I've never forgotten that moment, just sort of getting that revelation and feeling like, okay, I can have an impact in what I do with my life. And I don't want to squander that. I want to make sure that I do that. And, I've been in practice for 22 years, and, it's been great. But I feel like in this past year, it's even more than I really ever could have thought that would be possible at this later stage now. It's my kids are getting older and things are different now than they were many years ago, but it feels like now I can have a deeper impact with what we do in the practice, and that it just, we can touch people. It doesn't necessarily have to be thousands and thousands per week, but we can have a very deep and lasting impact on the people and the families that we do care for. And I think that's what's most important to me at this point.
That's powerful. And that's really all it ever really was for all of us, is you making an impact, serving God, saving lives. That you've got to keep that purpose going too. That some people never have it. You've had it and then it's really something you can't, because when you say you're in later years at 22 years into this, Dr. Rob and I, double it for me almost, and triple it for Dr. Rob. So but it doesn't go away. You want to keep serving God. You want to keep making an impact, making a difference, and you're making a difference in a lot of lives, even just having gotten to know what impact you've had on your team and, the other doctor that works for you. You're helping a lot of people.
Well, and I'll say definitely doesn't work for me, but we are partners in our practice and have worked together for our whole career. And yeah, it is a really tight team, and we're in this together, and we love it. We love our team, and we just constantly want to pour into them. We want them to stay with us for a long time, and they're a wonderful team. And so that's a high value, priority for us, is to make sure that our team is well cared for, that we're communicating to them how much they mean to us and how much they mean to what we do. And our patients feel that, and our patients love them. So it's a really special thing that we have.
That's amazing. My mom, when she got older, my dad had died. She wasn't working anymore, and she didn't have a purpose. And it was really interesting because I would see other people in their 70s that had purpose and still were making an impact, and they were serving the church or some ministry or something that was doing good for the world. And it was like two different people. My mom was, had become old, and somebody same age, 73 years old, was young, because they were still doing something important. Getting it back to chiropractic, because I want to find out more about what inspired you to get here and be so passionate about making a difference. Like when I went to school, a chiropractor had saved my shoulder. So they didn't save my life. I had a bad shoulder. I was a wrestler, so fixing my shoulder was like saving my life. And then I'm sitting in second quarter in chiropractic school, and Sid Williams stands up, and he starts talking about a life of service, changing the world, making a difference like you're talking about here, that removing subluxation could heal the flu, cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, like whatever's going on, this person would heal through the miracle of chiropractic. And it transformed this young wrestler who just did this because I wanted to help other athletes with shoulder fixing. And it turned me into a whole different person. And so it was that, Sid Williams, I could still remember hearing him in that second quarter class, and just changed my life. Like, wow, I could serve God and impact the world versus fixing shoulders. I can't believe I'm here, and that changed everything for me. What was that moment for you?
And there's two things that came to mind as I was listening to that story. I can remember in my first try at Palmer in Davenport, and so I guess I was 22, and I grew up with asthma. I've never shared this before with you, but I grew up a very allergic, asthmatic child, and with the chronic ear infections, that whole story, that was me. And so I was introduced to chiropractic care, probably as a late teen. And then even when I got to Palmer, sitting in that first day of classes, took a puff of an inhaler and just had like all these shocked, horrified people around me, like, what did she just do? And I'm like,
they called security.
Like, she doesn't belong here. But I didn't know what I didn't know. And, I'm like, well, I need this in order to breathe properly. And anyway, to say that my eyes were opened from that day. And, we had Dr. Guy Riekman speaking to us. At that time, he was at Palmer Davenport. And, we had our philosophy classes with him, which was, immensely impactful, obviously. And, and I remember the day that I threw that inhaler in the trash can in my apartment in Davenport, and it was like, okay, that is it. No more. I don't need that. My body can heal itself. And it did. And I obviously don't need that anymore, and haven't for well over 25 years. So, that was sort of the first thing, that experience transformationally for me, and how then I could speak about that and share that with people in our clinic, and just then see their eyes open and see their lives change. The other piece that I thought of is just, in terms of having this global impact, and not just inside the walls of our office, but in, the early years when I was practicing too, some other mentors of mine had shared with us an opportunity to support a very special charitable organization called Compassion Canada. And I've partnered with them for years and years, but every time we see a new patient, we donate to them every time, every month. And so that makes me feel like not only, are we helping those patients, they come in, but every one of those people then represents an impact that we're making somewhere else in the world, that those people I'll never physically touch, but we can still change their lives in a different way. And so that's been incredible, to see it like locally here and what we can do, but also just places we'll never touch physically, but can still impact.
So I have two questions from what you just said. One is, because I hadn't heard about you and the inhaler. I think that's a great story. And so now you've got people, of course, in chiropractic that would say an adjustment does not impact anything but, whatever sort of facet syndrome you have and pain in your low back, and don't touch the neck or all these awful things that chiropractors say. Yeah. What do you say to them when you're like, well, listen, it cured my asthma? How does that conversation go?
Yeah. I mean, people do give me that look still, when I share that with patients or, a newsletter about it or whatever the case. And, it's just explaining to them how when you remove that interference to your brain, communicating to your body, to my lungs, and when you remove that interference, your body's able to function the way that God designed it to begin with. I wasn't born with a need for an inhaler to keep my lungs and airways healthy. We just didn't know that before, and my parents did not grow up. We didn't live the chiropractic lifestyle at all, and we had a good lifestyle, but it wasn't that. And so they did the best they could with this sick, wheezing child. But my body was designed for more than that. It was created for perfect health. And so we needed to find the right way to express that.
Which, certainly gets deeper into the mission, the purpose, the destiny of the chiropractor. There are children out there like baby Erin that don't know, their parents don't know about the power of chiropractic. And as my mentors taught me, guys that have went to be with the Lord many years ago, they'd say, who doesn't deserve to know about chiropractic? All the people are surrounded by them in a 1 mile radius of any of our clinics. Depending on your demographic, there are thousands or tens of thousands of people. They're using inhalers and other drugs that, like you just said, they're not suffering due to a lack of inhalers and other drugs. They're subluxated.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's carried over. And obviously I have a strong passion as a chiropractor and as a mom, a parent, to tell people that. And, when we see the mom or we see the dad, to make sure they know, like, let's check those kids. Regardless of, if they have breathing problems or not, we need to check them. We need to make sure that they're able to be maximally healthy. That's their birthright. That's what they deserve.
Yeah, and that's also like what we also refer to as the silent miracles. So what conditions and diseases were they on their way to developing and suffering from? So for those, again, chiropractors or just people in general who are focused on symptoms, well, what about the symptoms on their way or the diseases and conditions on their way that are all in developmental processes? I always tell people disease is what's happening right now, regardless of how you feel. Cancer is what's happening today. Heart disease, Alzheimer's, diabetes, that's what's happening today. We got to check you today, not when you get the diagnosis.
That's right. And I mean, it's kind of, that funny moment where, we have all these healthy kids in the practice, and people will say, like, why do kids need to even be here? And they're healthy kids because they've been there, for many years, and in some cases their entire lives. We just kind of celebrated yesterday, actually, was adjusting a mom and a daughter. So the mom said, little Harvey's turning 10 next week. And well, I started adjusting mom when she was pregnant with Harvey. So it's just those little full circle moments that are just awesome. And, we'll never know. And thankfully, we don't need to find out what path they might have taken, if they hadn't have had that opportunity in that life. So
that's so big. And again, just showing my age again, the Harveys, I'm taking care of their kids now. So that's in my.
I can't wait for that.
Yes, I've got Harveys that have 3 kids now that we're adjusting it. It is a lot of fun. Yeah. And back, not to, I want to move on to, one other question that I had for you, but, back on the thing of getting the kids adjusted, one of the things I'm constantly teaching my patients is that when you drop dead of a heart attack at 55, that's the subluxation you were born with. or the problems you had as a kid. And there actually has been studies where they found it's actually the study that they had to do. It goes back to during wartime, where they've done autopsies on these 19-year-old kids. And they found at 18, 19, 20 years old, they're already seeing heart disease developing. Now, they're not going to die from that until they're 50, 60, 70 years old. But there it was in full development, years and years of development at 18, 19, 20 years old, because that's what they've been growing up with. So, those parents or those young people would say, I don't have heart disease. Well, I don't need to see the chiropractor or make some changes in my lifestyle. I'm doing great. And that becomes the metaphor of you jump off the building, the 20-story building, and as you're going down, you wave at each level and say, how you doing in there? I'm doing great so far. But the problem is at the end.
It's kind of like how we communicate to patients, when they're in a phase 1 of degeneration and thinking it's not that serious, and you realize and you tell them, well, it's a phase 1 now, but every phase 4 started right here. And that's that whole process of making sure they understand, well, it's not about how you're feeling in this moment. It's, let's change the course of this now. And may you never know what fate you could have had. Yeah.
Amen. Yeah. It's about the future, not today. That's for sure. I think that's the craziest part about healthcare. And certainly you probably run into this quite a bit with the Canadian system. It's certainly awful here, where you don't do anything till there's a symptom. And that's years and years in the making, and so late in the process. It's just absolutely insane. So for chiropractors that are out there and they're not seeing babies and children and people that are asymptomatic, they're really missing the boat. Yeah. So I am going to steal one extra question I have, because you brought it up. You're talking about, where when you see a new patient, the money goes to feed the hungry. And we actually did that for many years through our foundation. And at times, chiropractors were the leading force in feeding the hungry through the LaCie ministry that Dr. Rob and I were working with for many years. And one of the things that you find, and I'm just looking for your feedback on this, when I was getting my business degree, what they talk about is when an organization is that mission-based, when they show that they care about the culture, they care about the environment, they care about the world like that, when you're on a mission, the value of that organization is far greater. Even its valuation, even if you go to sell your company, it has a greater valuation because it's mission-based, but also the impact it has on the patients, or your customers, in terms of their results, their commitment to the practice, their referrals, their retention. So what have you seen there being mission-based? Because I love that you have this sort of tertiary purpose of, we're feeding the hungry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, obviously it means a lot to people when they hear that. And, we've done like the Christmas tree with the children, that they can take a child off the tree and sponsor them. Like, we've done that kind of stuff. And I think the people who are more kind of involved in what we do that way, or who know more about it or share our faith, they actually are the people who stay the longest in the practice. It's funny how that works. I just watched your video today about retention, and it's like the more engaged they are in your mission and your practice, and the more likely they are to have great results and to stay and to bring their family and all of that. And I definitely, that has been my experience for sure. And there's no way to separate my faith and who I am and from what I do. Like, it's all me, right? So it's just, that just comes out, that's just part of what we do, is just people will just know about what I love and what I care about. So
that's powerful. Yeah, that there's an old saying of mine too, where we're on mission. We love chiropractic. We understand the dangers of subluxations, but our patients don't really know it because we're not letting it come out. So I'm not surprised that with the success you're having, you're willing to and brave enough to and courageous enough to allow what you are about, who you are, what you're passionate about, to come out of you and be part of the practice. Those are always the best practices that are out there.
Well, it's like what we said at the very beginning, like, I don't want to squander the opportunity that I have to, with whatever time I have or however long I'll be there in the practice with people, like, to make sure that it's maximum impact. We're doing what we believe is right and true. And then I feel really good about things at the end of every day, regardless of how the day went. I know that I did my best.
Yeah, it's the most satisfying. It's the only way to have a fulfilling career and be everything God made you born to be. So kind of last piece here. You and I both have a passion for these prayer calls and listening to these pastors that are in love with chiropractic. And it's fascinating to me. And I've had the opportunity because I've been working with ministries now for 25 years and traveled the world and spoken in hundreds of churches. And the pastors that bring me in, or the key ministry leaders that have brought me in to be a part of their movements and create content and curriculum for them, they are people who know God more than anybody I've met, who, in terms of their knowing God, they've got a relationship with the Holy Spirit, their commitment to Jesus Christ like none other, some of them famously like none other. And somehow those are the guys that really appreciate chiropractic. Like they jump on it right away. Something tells them this is the most important thing for their health immediately. And they all get behind us. Whether it's been, you've seen a few of them, Dr. James Davis, Bishop Mark Sharona, Francis Miles. These are world leaders in ministry who love chiropractic. It's not a stage thing because they're patients of mine, or Dr. Ray, Dr. Rob. They've got a commitment to getting adjusted, and they tell the world about chiropractic. And so I know you wanted you to just kind of share some of the things you heard even just from those guys that have really made a difference in your life here recently.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of astounds me to hear people like that and that caliber and all of that to talk about what we do the way they do. I said to you before, like, I've never heard a non-chiropractor speak so passionately, and in fact, probably do a better job than some of us do at kind of relaying the principle and the laying on of hands, like just learning more about that and has really kind of rendered me almost speechless. I know I don't seem like I'm speechless very often, but it's astounding. It really is to hear that. And it makes me feel so much more committed to what I do, because I feel like if I wasn't a chiropractor and I watched them or listened to them, I would want to become a chiropractor immediately. And so the fact that I already am, it's like, wow, this is so cool. This is amazing. And the analogy that Bishop Sharona used about the key and the lock, it just made me feel like, wow, I really am so uniquely created to do this, and nobody else will do it exactly like me. I won't do it like you or Dr. Rob, and I'm not meant to, but I'm doing it exactly the way that I'm supposed to.
Wow. Yeah, and that really ties back to chiropractic, because just that key in the lock metaphor, that's one you got to go back and you listen to two or three times to fully embrace it. But that's the whole idea of chiropractic is, so you are a key that is matched to a lock, and no other key and no other lock will match. That's how God made us, uniquely to make an impact on the world, again, to achieve his purposes, fulfill our destiny for the greater good, for the expansion of the kingdom, for the good of all people, for just the blessing and the praising of Jesus and the worshiping of Jesus. Like, this is what we're created for. But without chiropractic, and that's why these guys are so passionate about it, we can't be that key in that lock. We can't be everything that God intended us to be without chiropractic. And that's what turns them on to it. I think I shared with you, but it's worth sharing again here. At that July event, we're going to do at 3 Days of Glory with Francis Miles. At some point, for those of you that are there, he's going to get up there and spend 15 minutes on chiropractic. And that's not because we're there. Like, he does it at all of his events because he wants people to know about the power of chiropractic and his description of it. And he has a lot to say about chiropractic that, like you said, is better than most chiropractors or any chiropractors. But he says that when I get adjusted, the reason is it allows God to flow through me at 100%, which there's no better description of chiropractic than that. And he says, I won't come up here and speak to you unless I've been adjusted, because I want you to get 100% of God flowing through me. And that, falls right again into that key and that lock metaphor.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm looking forward to that. I hope I can get down there. It's crazy right now with the travel between our countries, but I have a feeling it'll work out.
That's why we committed to go up and do at least the one with you. So we're crossing the border to the other way awesome. Here in June. Well, I really appreciate that. This was amazing, as I thought it would be, and took on a life of its own. Thank you so much for all that you're doing to serve God and save lives. When I see you, I see Jesus.
Thank you. I could say exactly the same to you, and I'm so honored just to be a part of your group and yeah, learning from all of you. So thank you so much.
Amen. Well, bless you, everybody who's listening and watching, and remember who you are.